Welcome back to the Jungle Fever podcast. I'm Ethan Tart and Abe Crowley's here alongside me. Episode 50, half century. Pretty crazy. We've been rolling with this. Hopefully a little bit more successful in terms of the Bengals season this upcoming year as opposed to last year. But we have a lot of fun doing this. We're gonna keep doing it as long as we're both able to. So we're gonna keep it rolling this week. Again, we were just talking about it before we hopped on the air that it really isn't a ton going on at the moment. A lot of kind of quiet, dead air in the NFL right now. Just kind of how it is in these couple of weeks post draft. A lot of players kind of getting in, a few off-season things here and there. A lot of teams have OTAs that start either next week or the week after. The schedule won't release now. I told believe about a couple weeks from now, probably it looks like May 18th or around there is when they're targeting. That'd be 2 weeks from today. So we'll kind of we've got a few different things we're gonna hit on today, but today's kind of an open-ended episode. We could go in a few different directions. So let's start off with kind of I think what a lot of Bengals fans are looking at right now. Obviously, I think a lot of Bengals fans are relatively happy with where the team's at right now. They're excited with what they saw in the draft. They think they did a good job with adding to this team in free agency during the initial signing period. And then, of course, the big swing of trading for Dexter Lawrence and bringing that big, ferocious man to the front of that Bengals defense. But as there typically is, there are probably things that can be fixed. In fact, I can tell you it's not probably. There are things that can be improved on this roster for sure, as really the reality is for 32 NFL teams. There is no perfect team. We haven't had a team go unbeaten and win the Super Bowl in over 50 years. So for a team to do that, you got to be pretty close to perfect. And the Bengals are far from that. They could still very well be quite good, but there are some areas they could improve on. So there have been a few external free agents. Aiden, I'll kind of let you take the wheel here. There's been a couple of rumors here and there, some swirlings. I know Duke Tobin had a press conference last week where he kind of said, look, money is a little tight. And we're going to get to Myles Murphy a little bit later today as well. But that also plays into the money equation as well with his fifth-year option getting declined. But what directions can you kind of see the Bengals going here in terms of signings? Because as Duke mentioned, it's not a ton of money that's lying around with how much money they had to pay up front now with this Dexter Lawrence contract, as well as some of the other things they're doing, specifically that big three on offense and how much they're paying those guys.
You know how you know how every other team in the league alleviates any sort of cap stress that they feel at this point in the year? Do you know how
We
literally
don't do
every
that
other
to you.
31 other teams do it? They've restructured the quarterback deal,
Mhm.
which Joe Burrow has said that he's been open to multiple times and he's willing to do. And I just don't know why that hasn't been done, unless you're just convinced that you aren't making a move. But I still think there are moves that need to be made. So that's number one. The whole like crying broke thing for me is just never going to land because there's different avenues that you can take in order to alleviate that. And teams all the time do it. Look at the Eagles. The Chiefs, I feel like, have restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract at least like three times, it feels like, on this current deal. He signed that like 10-year
It's
deal.
and they did it on the last one too. Like, it
Right,
was, they
right.
even, I believe, the whole reason he signed this new deal was not only to get Mahomes more money, which he very well earned, but also to free up, current cap space because so many of these teams backload these deals,
Mhm.
right? And they open up that space for that year and the year after, and they backload it. I mean, look, I mean, I remember the late 2010 Saints. I mean, every year it was a new restructure every year. They were millions and millions under the cap. But there's a reason why that team obviously they didn't get over the hump. But there's a reason that team contended to such a high extent because Mickey Loomis and that front office went all in. And I mean now they're kind of reaping the I guess the other side of the
Right.
sword here over these last couple of years. But
At some point, you got to pay the
yes,
toll.
when you
You got
got a
to pay.
quarterback like Drew Brees and you've got there were some great players on those late 2010 Saints rosters. Michael Thomas had a historic season. Some other phenomenal players across that team. Alvin Kamara has been such a great servant for them. You got to maximize your window. I think that's the big phrase right there. Maximize the window. We
Right.
just talked about this a couple weeks ago with the Dexter Lawrence trade. You just opened a monster window, right? And as we're
Right.
going to talk about with this schedule and everything else, the window is wide open. You got to take advantage.
Right, but at this point in the offseason, right, you look around the landscape of free agents, and they're free agents at this point in the offseason for a reason.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of
I've got a
Listen,
list up. I've got a list up right here, and I can
sure,
run you some of the highlights.
sure. I have one in particular that I would really enjoy for the Bengals,
Yes.
but go ahead and go
Here,
ahead.
so here is the current list. A lot of these guys are going to recognize a lot of these names. There's a lot of old vets that are kind of looking for new homes. I would imagine a lot of these guys get signed before training camp. Barring retirements or major injury concerns, like particularly for this first guy here in Tyreek Hill, formerly of the Dolphins and the Chiefs, obviously coming off a major knee injury slash leg injury from last season. Stephon Diggs, another one with some off the field questions, right? He's actually currently in multiple legal disputes. Taylor Decker, another guy, much older, injury concerns there. Marshawn Lattimore, Trayvon
Sure.
Diggs, Jerry Sneed, Debo Samuel. Aaron Rodgers doesn't really count because if he does come back as a free agent, it will be to the Pittsburgh Steelers. A couple of older Browns linemen and Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin. Familiar face here in right tackle Jonah Williams, Son Reddick, David Njoku, who has a meeting with the Los Angeles Chargers tomorrow. This is a name, I think this might be the name you're talking about here in Joey Bosa. Who is allegedly being recruited by some old friends. David Onyemata, DJ Reader, another old friend, Jimmy Ward, Russell Wilson, Mekhi Becton, Taysom Hill, Bobby Okereke could be a name the
Are
Bengals
you
like.
going to go through the whole list?
That was going to stop right about there because the next name on the list was Logan Wilson and he retired. So,
Yeah,
uh,
we're getting in the weeds. Listen, when you look at this team, linebacker still obviously a need. So I think the Bobby O signing, it just makes a lot of sense. I don't know. He's probably the best available still. I mean, Bobby Wagner's going to be 36 this season. So you talk about needing a caddy. That's a caddy, but he's a shell of himself. Obviously, at that age, he can still thump in the run game a little bit, but don't ask him to play pass coverage. Bobby O got cut, obviously, for a reason, but he was still somewhat productive in New York. And he just kind of felt like the odd man
I
out.
mean,
He's
led
also
the
going
league in tackles a couple years ago,
right.
right?
He's going into age 30 season, so he's
Yep.
aging out of his prime and all that stuff. Again, he's a free agent for a reason, but he's somebody who,
Linebacker primes are getting younger and
right.
younger, man. I mean, you're seeing it like so many
Which is
of these.
another reason why I hated the Demetrius Knight pick on draft night, and I still
How
do.
old is he, Aiden? Can you remind me how old he is
It
again?
feels like he's 35. He's not
Well,
actually.
how old is he really?
He's what, 25, 27, or 26?
26.
26. Yeah.
Yeah, which
So,
again, like I think I'm a little higher on Demetrius Knight than most, and I still have major question marks. So
right, right.
you want to know
So,
who else is 26 years old? I think I want to check this here real quick. Um, there's a couple guys, they're not 26, but like Logan Wilson's 29 out of the league,
yeah,
right? After
I mean,
playing at a high level, played at a high level.
yeah, that's going back to the last year's draft, and I still despise that pick, but it's okay. So Bobby O would be for me, and then swing tackle is still needed. Some kind of backup tackle presence is needed on this team. I would not be shocked if they hit up the good pal Williams and be like, "Hey, you want to come back and be the backup?" Because do you really trust Cody Ford in a pinch? Listen, Amarius Mims, for as good as he's been when he's on the field, he's missed time at multiple points in just the 2 years that he's been on the team. He hasn't been healthy 100% of the time for a full season, which is very difficult at that position, but it's something that the Bengals can't afford. They can't afford an injury at tackle. The team just plummets if that happens because they don't have an option. The option is Cody Ford, and he was horrendous at tackle when he came back in. And then obviously Orlando Brown Jr. is aging out. So I would like to see an addition at tackle and at linebacker. I know a lot of the noise is behind Joey Bosa, and that makes sense. He's a big name, he's a big brand, and he was okay in Buffalo, but again, he's a shell of what he was before. He would be a nice addition, and he would just add to the depth at your defensive line. But I just think you're very strong in that position, and maybe you can get stronger. But I think there's more glaring needs elsewhere.
Absolutely. My mom just got home, so we're moving mid-episode here. I gotta get out. I gotta get out of her way. Let me tell you, when my mom gets home, it's her time. She's coming home. She does a great job. Want to make sure she's got her spot. I'm hopping to my dad's office real quick because he's at
Oh, there
work
you
as
go.
well.
The
Um, I
deliverable
mean, I've got
spot.
a couple of thoughts again, also along those lines. I think, like you talk about the linebacker spot, and oh my God, the lighting here is so bad. Um,
With
the
lamps on. You
linebacker
need some
spot.
front lighting. You need some front lighting, Ethan.
There we go. That's a little
That's
better.
better.
That's a little better. I think that the way that this kind of roster is set up, I like the way that you phrase the kind of I guess that guide the sort of, and now my dog's gonna go nuts because my mom just went home, so I just got home, so bear with me on that. I think when you look at the way that this roster set up, we talk about that guy, that kind of hand holder. You've got two guys who massively struggle in year one at the linebacker position. I think having a guy like Bobby Wagner or Bobby Okereke, either one of those guys, or really any one of those free agent that might potentially be, you know, in the cards. I think when you're looking at having a guy like that, just to they don't even have to play all that often, but just to be a helper, be somebody who can help guide those two through, the fire of the NFL, I think could be massively beneficial. Now, obviously, the money is a different question, right? As we mentioned, Duke Tobin has kind of talked about how, they're a little tight on cash, which they're kind of lying, but it's fine. Um, I think I think you can still make it work, and it all goes back to what Aiden started off with just restructure the dang quarterback, right? Burrow has openly said that he is okay. At the end of the day, by the way, and this is a common
He's just
misconception
getting
as well.
paid.
Exactly. Restructures don't cost quarterbacks any money. Now, it might push some money back, and that's, I think, what throws fans off because Joe Burrow might get paid a little bit less in 2026, but he'll get a lot more in like 2029, right? So, we're in year one of this extension that he got signed right before the 2023 season opener or
Yeah,
2024. I
yeah,
believe it
I'm looking at
is.
it right now.
I think it was 2024. I believe it was right
Yeah,
before. Or no, it
23.
was 23.
23.
So
Yeah,
23,
23.
24, 25. We're heading into year four of that
Yeah,
extension,
correct.
right? Like and I think not all of that was because some of those rookie years were still kicking in, and then so we're in I think really in like
$48 million cap hit. I'm looking at it right now.
exactly. So you cut that down, the Bengals could probably free up about at least 10 to 15 million in space by restructuring Burr. And I don't think it's a crazy ask either. As Aiden said, I think 31 other franchises would have probably done it by now. But here we are. Right? Again, it's been an off-season for change, right? The Bengals have made a lot of uncharacteristic, non-Bengalsy moves. Maybe this is another one that they knock out. So
You know, you would like to think, right?
I think it makes way too much sense. Why not?
Yeah, they've done a lot this, like you said, they've done a lot this offseason that's made me been like, what did you do with the Cincinnati Bengals? The Dexter Lawrence deal obviously was the big one, but then the way they drafted, which we talked a lot about last week, was just very different from where they were before. So maybe that is a sign that change is coming, or maybe they're just getting our hopes up just to crush them like they typically do.
Yeah.
Always.
I know, in particular, DeAndre Hopkins has actually been very vocal recently about wanting to play with Joe Burrow. And wide receiver three is a sneaky need, not a high need. They obviously drafted Colby Young in the fourth round. They've got kind of a mismatch of names there at that spot behind the big two, right? You could maybe slightly consider Mike Gesicki a receiver. You've got Andre Yosebas
I
there.
do.
You've got Charlie
I consider
Jones.
Gesicki a receiver.
That's fair. You've got Charlie Jones, Mitchell Tinsley, I think, is a part of that conversation after last year. Um, and now I guess, you could look to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, but, does it make sense from a Bengals perspective?
I don't think so. I mean, you think about what they ask that wide receiver three to do, and it's a lot of like the dirty work. It's a lot of the inline run blocking. It's narrow in the slot in the formation and get in and be physical with those slot corners to
It's
try and
why
hurry up.
Tinsley has a roster spot in the first place,
It's why
right?
Yoshi's still on the field, to be
That
totally
too.
honest with you, because Yoshi everything else outside of that, you tend to struggle with. But he's so big, he's so strong, and his frame is so good that the Bengals really value him, and he has been a valuable asset for them. However, when it comes down to it, and it's time to win one-on-one press coverage, Yoshi just he can't. He hasn't shown the ability to win those one-on-ones. So you need kind of a difference maker, but you need somebody to do both. And is DeAndre Hopkins at age 34 the guy that you were going to ask to
Yeah.
do dirty
It
work?
it
I don't
just
think so.
it really feels like, to be honest, it feels like just a big luxury, right? Like, would he be cool? Would he probably score a couple of touchdowns, make a couple of great plays? Yeah, probably.
I mean,
But
he's still
like,
got his hands. He's not going to
yeah,
forget how to catch the football.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw it last year in Baltimore. He made some plays, right? But he was kind of in almost a wide receiver two role in Baltimore with how injured Bateman was at times last year, and they didn't really have. I mean, their receiver core just wasn't a super big strength of that team. So, I think I don't think it's very realistic personally,
No.
and I think honestly, when DeAndre Hopkins zooms out, I'm sure like most receivers in the NFL. They'd love to play with Joe Burrow, but I think it just doesn't really make sense. I think from his perspective, to be quite honest, because I don't think he's going to get the targets he'll probably want.
No, but I don't know at this point in his career. I don't know if he cares about that.
Sure.
I view him more as like someone who wants to win a championship and win. And just look at the couple teams that he signed with recently. I mean, he did that stint with Kansas City and then he was in Baltimore. I mean, I think after being in Houston for so long, I mean, Houston was good when he was there, obviously, because that's when Watson was balling and everything. But he wants an opportunity to, I think, win a championship. And listen, this is a team that on paper feels good enough to do it. And so I can understand the attraction there, but I just think from the Bengals perspective and what they're looking to do, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. However, they still don't really have that guy that you feel great about. You hope that Young, who you drafted in the fourth round, is that guy that kind of steps into that role maybe and kind of kicks Yoshi out. But we'll see. I'm still the jury's still out. But it's come time and time again. The Steelers did it last season when we lost. They just go double double and then they say whoever that third guy is, please beat us, and they
And I
happen to
believe
be good.
Gesicki was hurt for that game. So like
Right,
it really was, Yosivas, a couple of those tight ends, right?
right.
That mismatch that they've kind of got back there. Um, I think a couple other things to think about were number one, Eric All is back. How healthy will he be?
Yeah.
How, you
That's the
know,
question.
much of a factor. Again, in the very limited time we saw of him, at this point, it was over a year and a half ago. He was very good in his rookie season, and then unfortunately, a tough break injures that knee again. Unfortunately for his sake, he's probably on that his last strike, right? Another injury, it might be that for, just the sake of his long-term health. So, it's obviously going to be very much eggshells, styrofoam, bubble wrap, whatever you want to call it. Make sure he is, being as safe and as clear as possible. But, there's a chance that he can stay healthy and be a factor as well, which would be great. And then, you've got to keep an eye on a couple of these other young guys as well, because everybody's got opportunities, right? There's a lot of chances, especially, preseason as we go through training camp. There are definitely spots. I think that whole receiver room, I think besides one and two, I think that every position is open. I think you've
No,
got
absolutely, absolutely. But I can almost
opportunities.
guarantee you the Bengals aren't holding their breath about Eric All. I mean, I hope the best for him. I really do. I hope he goes out there and is healthy, but he just hasn't shown it yet. He's a Cincinnati kid, went to Fairfield, and then obviously went to Michigan and Iowa. So you would hope that that story works out, and he was incredibly talented, but it hasn't happened yet. And
Yeah.
I feel like he's kind of the off-season darling that a lot of Bengals fans fall in love with, but I just don't see it
We
realistically.
haven't seen him
But
play since what, week
exactly.
5 of 2024. That's when
Right.
that injury happened, and he's been rehabbing for over, a year and a
Right. It's been
half
a year and a half.
now.
Like,
So
right.
it's a long road. It's a long road. So speaking of rookie contracts and guys that are in this, for the long haul potentially, Duke Tobin also in that press conference I mentioned earlier said that they were looking at bringing in Myles Murphy, but the fact that his option might not be picked up might be affected by Dexter Lawrence, and lo and behold, it was. The Bengals do not pick up Myles Murphy's 3-year option, or excuse me, his 5th-year option. This is an interesting discussion, I think, because you can really, I think, see both sides of this. Because on one hand, I think Myles Murphy has 8 career sacks, and he had five and a half of them in the last 8 games of 2026 or 2025, right? So in the first couple of years, you saw nothing, right? You saw no signs of a guy that could be impactful. And then he finally kind of turned that corner. And we've discussed this a number of times on this show about how an edge rusher path can be wildly different in the NFL, right? You got some guys who come in and just wreck everybody from day one. And then you've got some guys where it takes a couple of years. It takes a learning curve. Look at Trey Hendrickson, for example. His first couple of years in the league, I think he only had 5 sacks total, right? And obviously, it's been a different story since then. So, I think there's that side. And then there's the monetary side where the Bengals, this goes all the way back to our earlier discussion about the cash strap stuff and the restructuring and all that. They did say that they are looking to work through a long-term extension with Myles Murphy. If you're going to do that, I'm going to emphasize this because it is massively important. You have to do it before the season starts. It has to be done. Two points to that. Number one, it's not getting done if you wait till the season starts because that's just the Bengals. That's just how they operate. And number two, Myles Murphy could price his way out of the Bengals if he plays well, right? This is the double-edged sword here because on one hand, let's say the Bengals re-sign Myles Murphy, and I hope this doesn't happen. I've got a lot of faith in him after what I saw last year, but let's say it doesn't go well, right? Then you've got egg on your face, right? But on the other hand, if they re-sign Myles Murphy and all of a sudden he turns into a 10 sack a year guy, the Bengals look like geniuses. So, you know, it's a tough call. I think the Bengals will have some major discussions with Myles Murphy and his representatives. I don't think Murphy is going to I don't really think he'll take this as a slight, personally. I don't really think it is a slight. I think the Bengals still very much value Myles Murphy. I think they're just going to try and work something out this offseason and try and get him signed for the long-term future. Because if you think about it, you get Murphy signed up now, your edge rushers in theory are locked in for the next few years with Mafe and Murphy and Stewart as well. So, Aiden, what's your take on this?
The gut check moment for the Bengals for sure. They have to, you know what I mean? I feel like they've been kind of sitting on this fence with Myles Murphy. Although Tobin has been very adamant about his appreciation for him, he just hasn't really shown that in his first couple years. And you have to ask yourself, is what we saw in the second half of last season sustainable? And if so, like you said, you better get the deal done now because if he continues to improve and progress the way that he showed at the end of last season, that deal is going to look very different now versus the end of next season. So the decline on the fifth year option saves Cincy about $14.5 million in 27 is what that would have been. And so now the thought is you tried to get a longer term extension done. Myles Murphy, of course, when he was asked about it, first of all, he just said, "I'm here to play football." That's a classic answer that a lot of these guys give. But he also was he used the word very hopeful to remain in Cincinnati past 2026. He says he loves the city, he loves his teammates, and he is a spot that he wants to be. Money talks at the end of the day. We've seen a lot of guys say that, and different stuff happens. It's a business at the end of the day. But you can tell that his intentions are there. Meanwhile, Duke Tobin last month, he was talking about this situation, and he quote said, we're not only counting on him this year, but we would like a long-term relationship with him." That's a direct quote from Duke Tobin. So this is somebody who's wanted that to happen. And then I think you just look at the production at the end of last season. I think it makes a lot of sense to try and almost get in on the ground floor of this deal and try to get one that's cost effective because I am as much as I was critical of Myles Murphy to start out because it just didn't work out. The leap that he took at the end of the last season, I think is real. And
Something clicked.
I
Something
think it's
absolutely
real, and
clicked
I
when you
think it's
watch the
you
film.
can't teach his size, you can't teach his weight,
Yeah.
you can't teach his athletic ability, and it seems to finally be translating and
Watch
manifesting itself.
if any Bengals fans out there is interested in stuff like this, watch the second Baltimore game film. The game in Cincinnati, Bengals offense was terrible that game. Don't watch that side. Watch the defensive film. Myles Murphy looks like a game wrecker. I mean, I think he had a sack and a half in that game. I think he had 2 or 3 TFLs. Just he was a force. And this is Lamar Jackson, right? This is not just a scrub he was going against, right? So, there's a player there. I don't think there's much doubt about that anymore. There was for a long time. I don't think there's much doubt about that now. And I think for Myles Murphy, you take it as motivation through training camp, right? You come, bring that lunch pail to work, and then you hope to try and hammer something out. The Bengals front office has some big things to do between now and week one,
Yeah.
right? And we'll know when and where that game is pretty soon. But I think you think about the defensive players that need contracts. You figured out the offensive side last offseason, right? With getting T and getting Jamar, and that's in stone for these next few years. Got to figure out the defense this offseason. Turner looks like it'll get done. It's going to be the other two. What do you do with Dax? What do you do with Murphy? Where does the money come from? I think the first step, and it goes all the way back. You have to restructure Burrow. I just like,
I
I
want to
don't
hold
know.
my breath about Dax. I don't think a deal gets done with him.
Yeah, it just that I think that's the least likely of the three. I think I would rank them Turner, Murphy, Dax. I think that's a pretty clear tiers. I think DJ is pretty clear top. Like I would give that about a 90% chance of happening. I think I'd give Murphy about a
Bold. That's bold.
65. Yeah, I think Turner happens. I really do. I think
90% though?
go watch the interview that he did with Ari Mirov a couple weeks ago. He sounded very positive about
That's fine.
the outlook. So look, it's rare you kind of see like that. It's like a 50-minute interview that he does with Ari. It's good for Bengals fans. If anybody's interested, go watch that. It's on Ari's YouTube and Twitter. Um, and I give Myles Murphy about a 70-60% chance. I think Dax is in like the 20s. I just, I like Dax. This isn't a slight on Dax. It's just, I just think that's where the money's going to run out.
They took
So,
Takario Davis for a reason. I'm telling you, they took him to be a starting outside corner, and if he shows that he's good enough this season to handle that kind of responsibility, one of DJ Turner or Dax Hill is probably going to be walking. And I think Dax is the odd man out.
yeah.
I just think that that's the reality that they're in.
I mean, they're both entering their last seasons of their current contracts. Dax's fifth-year option was picked up, and DJ Turner's in the fourth year of that standard 4-year second round pick contract. So,
Mhm.
um, some big decisions, some big time decisions coming this offseason for, the Bengals and whatnot. Speaking of the offseason, I wanted to touch on this. I think it's such a silly thing, but like,
This is all
there
you, bro. You got this part.
I, this is I don't even want to bring this up 'cause it's just gonna make me angry. There is a vocal segment of this fan base that I'm convinced. Let me phrase this without getting canceled. Uh,
They don't know what they're talking about. I'll say it for
they
you.
don't know what they're talking about. That's a nice way to put it. They don't know what they're talking about. So obviously the Bengals are in the midst of off-season workouts, and these are totally voluntary, right? A lot of players will show up, some won't show up. Means absolutely nothing. Let's just start there. Let's just start there. Because a player does not show up to off-season workouts does not mean that player is sitting on their butt, drinking beers, eating chips, watching baseball, right? These guys are all some of the best athletes in the planet, regardless of sport, right? Football players are some of the most physical specimens you'll find, again, regardless of athletic ability in any kind of sport or level. So these guys spend millions, and I mean millions of dollars on their bodies, on training, on preparation, right? They take it serious, long story short. So there was some outrage outline, ton of guys are in the building. Dexter Lawrence is in the building for the Bengals. A lot of those defensive players are around. A couple of the O linemen, Marius Mims is around, stuff like that. The big three aren't there. No Joe. Joe was at the Kentucky Derby this week. That's cool. You're allowed to have some fun during the offseason. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And Mike Gesicki, I guess not too. But actually, no, Mike is around. I lied. Mike Gesicki is around. But, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're not there. They're working. They are prepping, right? And I saw this on Twitter yesterday. A Bengals fan like retweeting the fact that Burrow was at the Kentucky Derby, being like, "Why is he not in the gym? He was probably in the gym that morning." Like
Has Joe Burrow's play declined over the past 4 years, 5 years?
exactly. When he's
No,
healthy, he's a
I don't care.
top three
I
quarterback in the
don't
NFL.
care. I genuinely don't care. Like, yes,
Like,
he has a big brand. He's a celebrity at this point. Call it out. He is. He's a good looking dude, right? And so like he's got
you gotta
brand
tell
deals
me
and
twice.
endorsements and all the stuff going on for him. Like more power to him. This is the first time that Cincinnati's had like a celebrity sports athlete in a long time. since like Ken Griffey Jr. was in
Yeah.
Cincinnati for the Reds.
Maybe, I mean,
Like
yeah, Votto wasn't even like that popular,
because
right?
Votto's
Yeah.
not like a celebrity guy. Votto
Yeah.
was very much. I mean, he
Ken
was an
Griffey Jr.
MVP.
was at
Right.
times bigger than baseball.
Right.
You know,
So
it's
they just haven't had that. And it's like, yeah, he's going to be at these big events all the time because it's Joe Burrow. Like, but guess what? When it push comes to shove and it's time to play football, dude's a football player. Like, I don't
pads
care.
are going on, the
Yeah.
helmet's getting put on, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I
it's
just don't.
all I think it's like, and I just think it's truly like, I think people, and it's a this fan base problem, and every fan base has these kinds of people, but it's like, people just want to like I saw somebody say he's not a good captain. Are you kidding me? Like we're recording this, it's May 4th. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. It's May 4th. They don't play a game for 5 months. They're working all summer. They're allowed to have a little fun every once in a while. And we talked about this last week, the picture, the three of them and Mixicki were all together throwing. I think that was in either Florida or California. They were throwing. They were practicing. They were getting work in together. So I think it's such a silly argument. I think it's such a dumb thing to do, but we didn't have much to talk about today, so I figured we'd bring it up.
Other people don't have much to talk about, and that's why they talk about that.
Yeah. No, and you're exactly right. Like I truly think it's just a doldrums of the off season kind of thing, where it's
Right.
there's no reason to discuss it. It's just, people
Now, if it
are
was a situation like, and I don't mean this to like bring any like fun, like I'm not making fun of the situation at all. But if it was a situation like Puka Nacua, then
yeah,
yeah, then you
that's
can have
totally
a
different.
serious conversation about it. But it's not.
He went to he went to rehab.
Right,
Like that's
absolutely.
a major issue.
Right. And
Like
that's a distraction. That's I was obviously concerning the videos that were coming out, and I hope he gets help and I hope he's better because he's an incredible athlete and he's an incredible player. But like these are two different situations. He can go do whatever he wants as long as it's not taken away from his football ability. And in the 4 or 5 years where he's been the guy, it hasn't. So I'm good. I don't care.
yeah, he's gonna do just fine. Jamar's gonna be just fine. T's
We
gonna
need
play just
football to come back
fine.
so people can actually talk about football.
Right.
Stupid
Problem
stuff.
is we got a few months. We got a
Yeah.
few months before we get there. We got a couple more minutes. I don't think we're going to talk about too much more today. Again, like I said, kind of a doldrums of the offseason episode. I don't expect too much to happen over this next week or so. Next week we're probably going to talk schedules. I know the
Third
Bengals,
easiest.
yes, third easiest in terms of strength of schedule in the entire NFL. One of two AFC North teams in that top five. The Browns are also in that top five in
They're
terms of
always
easiest
up
strength of
there.
schedule. Yeah, I mean they bring the Bengals down, so they'll be all right. They got Shador, they got Deshaun Watson potentially leading the way for them there.
We don't have enough
Re-
time. We don't have enough
so
time.
no, no, we do not. But we'll probably talk a little schedules. If the Bengals play in Baltimore next year in prime time, I'm like not watching football. I quit. Like it would be the 22, 23, 24. It would be the fifth year in a row. Five. 5 years in a row if they do it for
I'm
the
calling my
Bengals to
shot right
play.
now. I'm calling my shot
Go
right now.
ahead.
Sunday night football, week one, Ravens at Bengals.
I think it's
That's
a
the matchup.
possibility. I think it's a possibility. I mean, the Bengals. So the one interesting thing about the schedule, and this will kind of be our lead in into next week. Um, the Bengals only play five 2025 playoff teams, and two of those games are Baltimore. They
Mhm.
play Houston, they play Jacksonville, and they play Kansas City. You know,
You got to
get
go.
her done.
You got to go.
I'd imagine, again, I could do some quick things here. I imagine that Kansas City game gets picked up by CBS at some point. I don't know where they'll put it. They didn't play last year. History, right? I think the Bengals will get at least one home primetime game, maybe two. I'd maybe even hazard a guess, say two. I think they'll get five primetime games. I think they'll be one of the hot commodities in the league this season, especially with the Lawrence trade, and the way it all went down. And just, like you said the second before, Burrow's a celebrity. He's one of the best players in the league. It's not the days of old where the Bengals are like scratching and clawing to get one Thursday night game, right? They're a big
Again,
brand in
Joe
this league.
Burrow's he's a celebrity. People want to see him.
Yep.
So
Yep. So some fun games. I mean, I don't have the team list pulled in front of me, and we'll do this next week, but some fun games on the schedule this year. They play some very good teams. It'll be fun to see how they end up doing and what they end up doing. So we will get to that next week, but that'll do it for this week's edition of the Jungle Fever podcast. For Aiden Crowley, up at Ethan Sargent saying so long. We will break down what we think we'll see for the Bengals schedule next week, and we will do it right here on the Jungle Fever podcast.